or possibility. As far as Mars, I would say more likely maybe late 2030s at the absolute earliest, maybe 2040s. But Mars presents a whole host of other challenges, so we need to make sure we have our systems right with the moon before we fully tilt in a Mars direction. Thanks for the super chat, and thanks for the question. Moving on to channel member Chuck Croston, the very generous $20 super chat. Thank you so much, Chuck, who says, love watching these. It's like being a part of history. And I'll second that, as I definitely ascribe to the idea that journalism is just witnessing and documenting the first draft of history, and we are honored to do that on the Space Beat. Build one more with a $2 super chat. This was obviously before the launch, asking what direction are they flying tonight. They launched in a northeasterly trajectory, heading up the east coast of the U.S. Deathlock449 with a very generous $20 super chat, saying simply SpaceX, go flight. Channel member Koi Light with a $2 super chat. Thank you so much, Koi, saying go Dragon go. Street Spitzley with a $2 super chat. Thank you so much, Street, again, for saying, reminds me of the 2X Deep Space Shuttle. Callistia Lee with a very generous $20 super chat as well, saying this never gets old. Go Falcon, go Dragon, go Crew 8. Yes, indeed. Sean Wolak with a $10 super chat, saying, watching from Deltona, let's make this amazing. And it certainly was. Dakota C with a $2 super chat, wanting to see Dogecoin go to the moon. Earth Aruba with a $2 super chat. Thank you so much, Flat Earth. Bonnie the Horse Girl with a $2 super chat, simply saying woohoo. Adam Gibbs, the very generous $20 super chat. Thank you so much, Adam, who puts in a plug for his construction company. Marcus Gallegos kicking off a good bit of generosity here on the membership front, gifting 20 Spaceflight Now memberships. Thank you so much, Marcus. And if you are one of those who got channel membership, be sure to thank Marcus in the live chat if you haven't already. Thanks again, Marcus, for that. Pedro Vasquez with a $5 super chat and says, thanks for the coverage. Thank you so much, Pedro, for supporting it. Channel member Callistia Lee gifting 10 Spaceflight Now memberships. Really appreciate that, Callistia, for that generosity. And also jumping down here to Jeff Groves, who gifted a Spaceflight Now membership as well. So if you are one of those 11 from Jeff or Callistia, or one of the 20 from Marcus, be sure to thank them in the live chat if you haven't already. Susan Gurney joining channel membership at the pad leader level. Thank you so much, Susan. Welcome aboard. SG with a happy spinning hippo emoji and a $10 super chat. Thanks, SG. Marcus Gallegos, who has been a channel member for 2 months, saying, what an absolutely amazing and successful launch. Godspeed Crew 8. Hope you have a wonderful and productive time in space. I guess they will be quite busy, as they will be conducting more than 200 experiments during their 6-month stay on orbit. So they will be quite busy. Channel member Josh King with a $10 super chat, asking, do you think Starship will fly this month or might get pushed to April? It's hard to say. As we mentioned earlier in the broadcast, SpaceX is conducting a wet dress rehearsal of the Starship rocket tonight. TBD if that has been successful. We'll wait to see if we hear word from SpaceX on that either tonight or sometime tomorrow. Of course, they need to also complete the
SpaceX Dragon Captain Mike there.
Dragon, got you loud and clear on the cabin mic.
Copy. Happy to say. Move to section 2.
Returning to Josh's question, the FAA still needs to issue a launch license, and so it's unclear at this point, time-wise and schedule-wise, how many things SpaceX still needs to accomplish before they get that launch license. So I will say it is certainly within the realm of possibility that they could fly this month. It is also certainly possible that it gets pushed back to April, which would make things very busy in April since we are expecting the crewed flight test of Boeing Starliner to launch that month as well. So we'll wait to see if that happens, but also that is partially dependent on the space station schedule and availability for docking. So with the delay of the Crew 8 mission to today, and of course the upcoming CRS or Commercial Resupply Services cargo Dragon flight to station coming up, that is also something to watch and may push Starliner's flight. I want to thank a couple more folks for your support before we go ahead to our launch replay in just a moment here. Janine Delasera for being a channel member for 4 months. Thank you so much, Janine. It says, and still happy. Glad to hear you're still enjoying channel membership. Charles Lee, another channel member with a very generous $20 super chat. Thank you so much, Charles, who says, absolutely fantastic. Thanks to all involved, SpaceX, NASA, and especially the astronauts. One small step for man, one giant leap for mankind. Jim Edgar with a very generous $20 super chat as well, who says, missed the launch. Oh, sorry you missed it live, but says Lisa Bean and Jim Edgar watching the replay. Yes.
LOS on voice comm. How copy?
You still go for the burn and 11-minute LOS coming up.
Good copy.
LW channel member with a $2 super chat asks a question that I'm not sure we actually got the answer to, which is, what is the name of the plush dog? I'm not sure they ever actually said. We'll keep an eye out for that and maybe get an update. There's a post-launch press conference in about an hour or so. So we will keep an eye for more details if they do happen to let us know what the name of the plush dog is. W Mac with a $10 super chat. Thank you so much, W, who says, awesome job, guys. Thanks for the great coverage. Well, thank you for supporting the coverage tonight. Brendan Rupp with a $2 super chat. Giving some support to his team, saying go Broncos. All right. And Bob Lill with a $2 super chat. Also saying thanks for the awesome coverage. Let's go ahead and round that out with a look at the launch replay here. For those who may have missed it, this was what we all saw and more importantly heard with the liftoff of the Falcon 9 rocket and the Crew Dragon Endeavour sending up the Crew 8 mission on its way to the ISS. And of note, this is a static camera view of the launch, so this will be of the liftoff and the plume. course, would be normally watching skyward as the rocket continues to climb. This is what our view looks like from here at the press site of a Falcon 9 launch. As you can see, the transporter erector starting to make its way back up into an upright position, part of the process of turning around the pad for future flights. Our thanks as well to James from Dallas for a $2 super chat saying Godspeed, making an old fighter pilot smile. We're certainly glad we could put a smile on your face, James. Thanks for being with us tonight. We're now T plus 38 minutes, 55 seconds and counting. Before we go ahead and proceed with our mission stats, now that we've got a successful liftoff of the Crew 8 mission and the Dragon Endeavour is flying free, I want to share with you some of the launch photography of, or not the launch photography, this is pre-launch photography, but at the point of crew walkout. These are some of the photos that our Adam Bernstein snapped of the crew before they headed off on their mission. Great, very human moments illustrating what's at stake for these launches and the precious cargo that that Dragon is now bringing up to the International Space Station for rendezvous and docking. The beginning of an 6-month journey for this Crew 8 mission. This is the mission commander, Matthew Dominic, taking a look out the window saying farewell to his wife and his 2 little girls, who chose the 0G indicator for this flight, an homage to their dog at home, who of course was not in quarantine with them to give Matt a fond farewell, but certainly is with them in spirit as a 0G indicator. Moving on, this one of mission specialist Jeanette Epps, taking a look out the window at her family. One last time before they headed off. Great mission pilot Michael Barrett smiles as he prepares at that point to head up to Dragon and head into space for a 3rd time, his 2nd long duration flight. Having first flown aboard a Soyuz, then a space shuttle, and now a Crew Dragon spacecraft, one of only 10 people who has flown in 3 different spacecraft launching from Earth. Finally, Alexander Grabenkin, the Russian cosmonaut. He was just the fourth cosmonaut to fly to the International Space Station as part of the commercial crew program on a SpaceX Dragon spacecraft. Great images from Adam this evening. Before we go to our mission stats to close things out, we do have one more replay to bring to you. This comes courtesy of Adam Bernstein again, but with a different camera. This was his tracking view. Here's one last look back at the launch of the Crew 8 mission. And that launch replay coming courtesy of our Adam Bernstein's tracking camera there. Do want to bring you one more bit of photography goodness, though. This coming from our other student launch photographer, Michael Kane. These are a combination of shots that he took. This streak shot from, I believe, Satellite Beach is where he was positioned for this particular photo. A little bit further down the coastline of Florida Space Coast from where we are here at the Cape. Here's another angle of that streak shot here. Again from Michael. And one more from stage separation, creating this great nebula effect as the Falcon 9 first stage booster was performing its boost back burn, getting ready to come back for a land landing over at the Cape. This is a video replay of what that nebula looks like that you saw in Michael's photos of stage separation as the boost back burn began. Unfortunately, is sans audio, but it gives you good visual indication of what this process is like as that first stage booster was making its way back down and reorienting itself before landing back at landing zone 1. That, I want to take a quick peek at the live chat. See, we did have one more person coming here. Toybo with a $2 super chat. Thank you so much. Who says, thank you for helping us watch history be made. It is very much our genuine pleasure. And with that, we're going to go ahead and close out as we always do with our updated mission stats now that we do have a successful liftoff, booster landing, and a Dragon that is on its way to the International Space Station. This was the first flight of Falcon Booster 1083. This was SpaceX's 305th Falcon 9 launch to date, its 20th Falcon 9 launch of 2024. This was, well, there wasn't a Falcon Booster reflight, so that number still stands at 249 since this was the first time for this first stage booster to fly. This was SpaceX's 20th orbital launch of 2024. This was the 102nd SpaceX orbital launch in the last 365 days, the 76th SpaceX orbital launch from Pad 39A, and the 169th overall orbital launch from this particular pad. And just as a bit of context for where SpaceX stands in relation to the other vehicles that launched from this pad, so far to date, as noted, this is SpaceX's 76th launch, combining both Falcon 9 and Falcon Heavy rockets. It is creeping up on the total number of space shuttles launched from this pad, which was 82. And there were 11 Saturn V launches from Pad 39A as well. Moving on to a graphical form, you can see SpaceX now stands at 20 launches on the year. Moving on to Dragon mission stats. This was the 5th launch of Crew Dragon Endeavour. This was SpaceX's 13th Crew Dragon mission to date, and its 22nd second-generation Dragon mission so far as well. So far, SpaceX has flown 34 professional astronauts to orbit, and with this flight, it has flown 53 humans to space. Moving on to recovery stats, this was the 38th landing over at Landing Zone 1, or LZ1. This was the 48th landing in Florida, the 63rd overall SpaceX landing when you factor in those in California, and it was the 279th overall SpaceX booster landing. Finally, pulling out to a global view of the space industry, this was the 14th orbital launch from Florida, the 21st orbital launch from U.S. soil. This was the 23rd orbital launch from a U.S. rocket company, including the 2 from Rocket Lab down in New Zealand, getting ready to launch a third, I believe, coming up next week, as a matter of fact. And this was the 42nd orbital launch around the world. Bringing it out to the pie chart, this is what it looks like. United States with 23 missions on the year, representing 55% of the pie. China coming up in the second spot with 24% and 10 launches. Russia, number 3, with 3 launches so far this year. And India, Japan, and Iran each with 2 so far. as a slight correction because we like to be accurate, this was actually the 101st launch within the past 365 days. 101, not 102. Just want to close out with accuracy. Also want to thank Mel Roberts Harold, one of our channel members, for a $2 super chat. Simply saying, outstanding. Agreed. And you know what was outstanding? The work that this team put on to make this all happen. So want to go ahead and give them their flowers before we bid you adieu for tonight. First off, want to thank all of the moderators working hard in the live chat to keep the conversations going and making sure that everyone is able to enjoy robust conversation and topics of debate in the live chat. Want to thank our friends Pete Karstens with Max Q Productions and Chuck Briggs for helping to support our coverage of the Crew 8 mission launch with tracking. Our thanks as well to our stalwart launch photography team of Adam Bernstein and Michael Kane. If you're not already following them, you really ought to. If you are on X, formerly known as Twitter, you can find Adam Bernstein at ABurnNYC, Michael Kane at MD Kane Jr. You can follow Spaceflight Now at Simply Spaceflight Now. And if you care to give me a follow, I am at W_Robinson Smith. Our thanks as well to our editor here at Spaceflight Now, Stephen Young. If you haven't already, be sure to hit that subscribe button on your way out and click the bell icon to make sure notifications are turned on. So that way you get alerted whenever we do have these live launches or we post any new videos. More are always on the way. And last but certainly not least, and actually most importantly, I want to thank you for taking part of your time, whether you've been with us since 6:30 p.m. Eastern, been with us for now 5 hours and counting of continuous live launch coverage. I think I need a Halls. My voice is starting to go, but really appreciate all of you for your ongoing support for not only big launch coverage like we had today, but also those of you who are with us for the Starlinks, as we will have another one of those coming up as early as tomorrow is the current plan. Another transporter rideshare mission also on deck for potentially tomorrow. So if you haven't gotten your fill of SpaceX Falcon 9 launches, we got plenty more coming in less than 24 hours. But really sincerely appreciate all of your support being with us, whether you're able to support us on a financial level with channel membership and the YouTube Super Chats, or whether you just leave a like and a comment and help us support with viewership as well. Appreciate however you are with us. So we are creeping up on 160,000 subscribers. Let me see if I refresh. Actually, nope. We've crossed that. We are sitting at 161,000 and some change subscribers. So thanks for pushing us over the 160 mark. Crossed 100,000 last year. I fully believe and support the idea that we'll hit 200,000 maybe by this summer. I'd like to see us get to 300,000 by the end of the year. I don't think that's out of the realm of possibility. And we look forward to giving you good reason to subscribe to Spaceflight Now and keep coming back, not only for live launch coverage, but continue and robust reporting here that you'll only find here at Spaceflight Now. You can find that in written form on the website or here on the YouTube channel. So thank you for being with us on this journey as we chronicle the spaceflight adventure in all of its forms. For all of us here at the Spaceflight Now team, I'm Will Robinson Smith. It has been an honor and a privilege to guide you through our live launch coverage of the Crew 8 mission. Be sure to keep up with Spaceflight Now on YouTube, on our social channels, Facebook, Twitter, X, and Threads for updates on the Crew 8 mission with docking and welcome, as well as Crew 7's return coming up very soon as well. Lots to cover this year. We look forward to bringing it to you all. The whole crew, one last time, I'm Will Robinson Smith. Be good to yourselves, be good to others, and we will see you next time. Good night, everyone. Godspeed to Crew 8.
2, 1, ignition, engines full power, and liftoff of NASA Crew 8. Go Falcon, go SpaceX, and go NASA.
1 Alpha.
Endeavour ascends, a beacon
one
of
Alpha.
human ambition. 1.7 million pounds of thrust now propelling Falcon 9 and Crew 8. Vehicle is pitching downrange.
Good morning and welcome to NASA's Kennedy Space Center in Florida. I'm Jasmine Hopkins and you are watching the post-launch news conference for NASA and SpaceX's Crew 8 mission. At 10:53 p.m. Eastern last night, that was Sunday, March 3rd, NASA astronauts and one cosmonaut lifted off for the International Space Station. The crew contained Michael Barrett, Matthew Dominic, and Jeanette Epps, along with Roscosmos cosmonaut Alexander Gurbankin, and they are now on their way to the International Space Station. Joining us tonight is a group of distinguished experts who are going to talk to us about that mission and what is in store for the crew. So starting from my left, we have Steve Stitch, manager of NASA's Commercial Crew Program, followed by Joel Montalbano, manager for the International Space Station Program, and finally Sarah Walker, director of Dragon Mission Management from SpaceX. We appreciate them being here with us tonight, and this panel will be taking questions from the media in the room and over the phone, but before we get to those questions, we'll give them each a moment for opening remarks. So, Steve Stitch, we'll start with you.
Thank you, and good morning, good evening to everybody. It's awesome to be here tonight after a great launch about an hour and 20 minutes or so ago. I really would like to congratulate the entire NASA SpaceX team, along with their international partners, Roscosmos, ESA, and the Japanese Aerospace Agency as well. Great to be part of this team. I think, launches like this really illustrate what it takes to do human spaceflight and to take it one step at a time, like we have all the way from the FRR, agency FRR that we had last Sunday. We took our time one step at a time each day. We fought some pretty challenging weather, I would say, over the last few days. We stood down a couple of days, 2 opportunities on March the 1st due to winds in the staging area. We made a really good try at it last night. We thought we might be able to squeeze in an opportunity, but the weather wasn't good, and so we stood down and scrubbed that launch. And then tonight, the weather held, and we had good weather in the staging area, good weather for the launch site, and we were able to launch successfully. It was awesome to listen to the crew and the excitement. You heard Matt Dominic make several calls to the ground relative to the abort boundaries going up the hill. And so it was great to hear Matt's voice. You could tell that they were really excited on their way to the International Space Station and on orbit. The vehicle is doing great. Before we came over here, we separated from the Falcon 9. That all went really well. We opened the nose cone, and that went just fine. Checked out the forward bulkhead Draco thrusters, which are the thrusters that we do the big burns with. Those all worked fine. Did one phasing burn a little while ago. It was about a 45 meter per second burn, and that went well. The crew will get a little off-duty time starting about 2 a.m. here in the morning, and then setting us up for the next big phasing burn, which will happen around 4:14 p.m. tomorrow. And then the rest of the sequence goes early Tuesday morning at 1:34 a.m. Eastern time. We'll do what's called the approach initiation burn. That sets us up for the final phase for the rendezvous and docking, and then we should dock around 3 a.m. Eastern on Tuesday morning, early in the morning. So right now, Dragon's doing well. We're excited to have Endeavour on orbit with its 5th flight. And then, we're going to set up for Crew 7 return. Once we get docked, we'll work on the Crew 7 return. The earliest return would be probably a week from today, around March 11th or so. The countdown was really smooth. We had, one item that we worked, and Sarah Walker will talk a little bit more about that, an area of the TPS around the hatch seal on the upper part that we had a little imperfection that we wanted to take extra time and make sure it was good, and Sarah will talk about that. So once again, I'd like to thank the entire team, thank our NASA SpaceX team and all the international partners, International Space Station Program, the Flight Ops Director at NASA, and I'll turn it over to Joel Montalbano.
Thank you, Steve, and what an outstanding launch. You know, you heard how excited the crew was. We were just excited in the Launch Control Center, as well as all the control centers across the globe watching this mission. Just outstanding. Steve mentioned that we're setting up for a docking around 3 a.m., and then we'll have hatch, March 5th, we'll have hatch opening about 2 hours after that. And this crew will do a handover with Crew 7, about 5 dock days. And so that sets us up, as Steve was saying, no earlier than about March 11th. But we'll be watching weather, and we'll wait for the best opportunity to undock and land Crew 7. Shortly after Crew 7, the focus will be to SpaceX 30, the next Drago cargo mission to the International Space Station, right now targeting the middle of the month for that. And then following that mission, we'll have a Soyuz launch on March 21st, and then a Soyuz landing on April 2nd. Crew 8 will dock to the forward port of the International Space Station. They will stay docked until late August, and we have about 250 experiments in science and research, technology development, as well as commercialization of low Earth orbit. With that, a huge thanks to all the NASA colleagues who make these missions work, to SpaceX, to our international partners. Just a true cooperation across the globe. With that, I'll hand it over to Sarah.
Yeah, thanks, Joel. Yeah, it's been a great week down here at SpaceX and Kennedy Space Center. I'm glad the clouds finally parted for tonight's launch. And we're proud to have just launched, as everyone has said, Crew 8 from Launch Complex 39A. It marks SpaceX's 13th human spaceflight mission. And I was thinking about what to share with you guys today. I was struck by this being the 5th flight of this Dragon spacecraft. It launched on the 5th anniversary weekend of Demo 1, which was the inaugural Dragon crew flight. And it's docking on March 5th, a couple days here. And its crew marks the 50th crew member that SpaceX has sent to space. So in just a handful of years since Bob and Doug flew this very spacecraft, actually, on Demo 2. So this spacecraft, which its first crew named Endeavour, has now flown the Demo 2, Crew 2, AX-1, Crew 6, and now Crew 8 crews to space for a total of 466 days on orbit and counting. So I'm glad to report we've inserted into a nominal orbit tonight. I think Steve mentioned also Dragon and the crew are on their way to the space station. We anticipate arrival around 3 a.m. Tuesday morning, Eastern time. It was an extremely quiet countdown on console tonight, one of the quietest that I've ever been a part of. But Steve mentioned the area of interest that we worked was around 45 minutes. The engineers who are doing the closeout photo check, once we close the hatch, they take detailed photos of the perimeter of the hatch and that final seal. And as they were doing those reviews, they noticed an area of interest on kind of the upper section of the RTV, which is kind of a top coating on the hatch seal, that they wanted us to take a look at. So we looked at the photos. Eventually it was determined that the size of the defect or separation of that RTV seal was within the qualified limits of the design. So that was ultimately the flight rationale that cleared us for launch. There were a couple of other areas of conservatism that further, I guess, increased the confidence. This is one of multiple redundant seals in this area. It's kind of a top coating over the pressure seal, which is then over the main seal for the hatch. There's also a very low heating region for the vehicle. And actually, this material expands under heating, and so we expect that actually a defect of this size would self-heal during the launch process. So, but we spent some time consulting with NASA experts and the SpaceX experts back in Hawthorne, and ultimately decided we felt comfortable and confident safely proceeding into today's launch. So it's amazing to think that SpaceX has now launched 45 times to the ISS. We've launched enough together that I think we can be really proud of what we've accomplished, but I think not enough times to take for granted just how much it takes to get this right every single time. A lot goes into that, and we know what the stakes are, and I'm really proud of the team and the clean execution that I saw tonight on console. I think there's an incredible team of engineers at both NASA and SpaceX over the last many months that have been laser focused on leaving no stone unturned as we stepped methodically towards tonight's launch. Yesterday night's launch, it's early morning now. Joel mentioned that once we dock to the space station in just over 24 hours, our next big event will be bringing the Crew 7 crew home to their families in about a week. And that's no earlier than Monday, but as always, we'll look at the weather as we're proceeding through the week and pick the best opportunity to bring the crew home. And then we're excited about the cargo launch that's coming up right on the heels. We actually loaded cargo earlier today into that vehicle, and we're in final preparations for launch. So huge thanks from SpaceX to all the NASA and Roscosmos and 45th partners on close collaboration again on this launch. It's really an honor for all of us to launch human spaceflight missions and to support all the science and research that the crews aboard ISS conduct. So thanks for letting us be a part of it.
All right, thank you all for those opening remarks. So now we're going to open up the floor for questions to the media in the room. If you have a question, please just raise your hand and we will get you a microphone. And to those of you on the phone, please press *1 to enter the question queue. So we have a question right here in the center aisle. We'll get you a microphone.
Thank you. Hi, Nick Alexander for Space Scout. I had a question for Sarah about the items of interest on the seal. Is this perhaps related to the age of Endeavour as it's gone through multiple flight cycles, or is this something that may have occurred during handling or final checkout? Thank you.
Yeah, this is actually newly applied like coating every time. So yeah, so it was just the nature of the application process that there was a minor defect there, and then we had the engineers evaluate the kind of acreage of the defect and make sure that that was within the limits of what that system's qualified to withstand. So, yeah.
Thank you, Sarah. Another question right here in the center aisle.
Hi, I'm Aaron Cooper with CNN. Can I get Steve and Joel to tell me a little bit about how optimistic we are we'll see a Starliner launch next month, how important that is to the programs? And Joel, anything we can also know about the leak on ISS?
Yeah, thanks for the question. Yeah, the Starliner launch is extremely important to the commercial crew program, to the ISS program, and to NASA. I was just over at the Boeing facility, I guess it's Sunday last week, on Friday. That spacecraft has been rolled into an area where they do the propellant load, and so it's sitting there ready for propellant load. What we've been doing is kind of watching how we progress with the Crew 8 launch, and then the CRS-30 mission, and then we'll decide when to load propellant. But that mission is on track. Right now we're looking at kind of the end of April. It really is based on this sequence of events that we talked about before. We have to launch Crew 8, bring Crew 7 home, then launch the cargo mission, which Sarah talked about is already, that vehicle's fueled, loaded with cargo, ready to launch. That has to come back, and then we'll do a port relocate. We're on the forward port, as Joel talked about. We need to move up to the Zenith port because Starliner, just like we did on Demo 2, is going to dock to the forward port. So right now, the vehicle's ready. We're closing out the certification. I would say the thing that's pacing when we go fly is really this complicated, sort of traffic management. And I'll let Joel talk about the leak.
Yeah, I'll just add one thing on Starliner. It's very important for the agency to have two providers that are delivering crew to the International Space Station. And so, we're excited to have Boeing and looking forward to having these missions where we have one SpaceX and one Boeing mission every year. On the PRK leak, no real changes since the last time we talked. Right now that hatch is closed, and the hatch is scheduled to be closed until early April.
All right, thank you. We have some questions here in the very front.
Hi, everyone. I'm Andrew Donovan from News Channel 9 in Syracuse, New York. We traveled here to tell the story of Jeanette Epps. I'm wondering, Steve and maybe Joel, if you'd weigh in about what she means to the crew, her hometown pride. We heard the Syracuse shout out already when she was leaving the atmosphere. Just what she brings to the team, her background, her upbringing, her challenges being, previously assigned to a mission and now finally up in space.
Yeah, for me, it was really exciting for me to watch her walk out today and see the excitement on her face as she made her way out to the launch pad, getting into Dragon, and you could just tell once she got on orbit the excitement in her voice. So, we're really excited to see her fly. I think she's going to do a great job while docked ISS, do a lot of great science, and I'll see if Joel has anything to add.
Today we had 3 rookies on the mission, and anytime you have rookies, the excitement is amped up a lot. and it's awesome to see them, you know, yipping and yapping and yelling and screaming. It is, and then once they get in orbit, it doesn't stop. And so they really enjoy it. They love being, they will love being in space. They'll love being on the International Space Station. So to me, it's exciting every time we have a rookie on board.
Great, thanks so much. We have a question right there.
Bill Harwood, CBS, and this is for Steve. About the SEAL thing, does NASA have the authority to disagree with SpaceX in a case like this and stop a launch if you wanted to? Number one, or is this a SpaceX call, period, on a system as subtle as this, and they're the ones that have the data? That's number one. And number two, what is your approach management style? Because when a problem like this crops up with just a few minutes before launch, I mean, no matter how you look at it, there's a lot of pressure on you to make a decision quickly, because you were on the verge of delaying fueling, which would scrub the launch if you didn't get that done, and then you're down to 10 minutes to launch before you resolve it. So just from a management standpoint, how do you guys deal with the last minute thing? You're smiling, Joel, because I mean, you know, anybody that watches one of this is going like, how do we know that, you know, you guys are really doing the right thing, to put it? I mean, I know you are, but it raises that question when you're faced with a decision like this in the last minutes of the countdown.
Yeah, relative to the first part of your, good question, Bill. Relative to the first part of your question, absolutely, NASA has the authority to stop the launch, and if we see a course of action that we don't necessarily think is right. I mean, a few flights ago, Crew 6, right, when we had the T-tab incident where looked like it wasn't filling, we couldn't get ourselves convinced that we would have a good start in the engine. NASA and SpaceX worked together, and we decided that it wasn't a good day to go fly. So we actually have that authority at any point in time. If we see something that we don't like, and SpaceX polls us multiple times in the countdown, polls us as late, in this case, as 5 minutes prior to launch. NASA, are you still ready? Are you still ready to proceed? For this particular case, I would say, have a lot of experience I do from Space Shuttle, and this was a thermal seal on what we would call the leeward side of the vehicle, right? This is the side of the vehicle that doesn't see the highest heating. So we looked at this particular defect in the seal. It's a thermal seal. It's made of RTV, as Sarah says. So that RTV generally will heat up during entry and seal any kind of anomaly. The engineers went back and looked at the heating in this particular area, the top part of this hatch seal, and that heating wasn't anything that would be of concern with this size defect. We also went and looked, we've flown a lot of, I would say, experiments in the TPS on cargo flights where we put some defects in the TPS, and we've looked at those on this side of the vehicle. We looked at that data in that time frame and said, hey, based on much bigger sizes of defects that we did as an experiment, that this would be no concern. We had our TPS experts involved, a couple of guys that I have utmost confidence in from the Space Shuttle program. I listened to the whole conversation that they had back and forth with SpaceX and their rationale for proceeding to launch. And I thought that they had exactly the right rationale for this size little imperfection in the seal. It really doesn't, you know, the hatch seal per se, the pressure part of the hatch seal is way underneath the vehicle, right? So this is in an area of a TPS seal. And so, you know, they had great rationale. Our guys agreed with SpaceX. They came to the really good conclusion. You're right, the clock is counting, but, you know, we could have backed out at any point on down inside of even a minute, so.
When the hatch was closed, or was this something that was there all along, they just didn't spot it before? Or?
Yeah, it's part of the hatch closure process. So it's normal that around an hour before launch, we're reviewing all the photos of that final operation, and then an engineer flagged it. Yeah, and I would just echo what Steve said. It was really a privilege to listen on the nets, the kind of methodical nature that the teams worked through. Our experts back in Hawthorne and the NASA experts back in Houston were immediately on the phone and on the nets together, working together. And then there's also NASA operators here with us in launch control. And one thing that I thought was really neat is once our vice president of Dragon Engineering got on the nets and explained his flight rationale and why he and his NASA counterparts were comfortable proceeding, the NASA operations manager said, you know, you come to all the same conclusions that our team here in the room had just independently come up with you. And so then we corroborated one another and agreed to go for launch. So it was really a neat thing to watch happen.
Yeah, the voice loop communication was outstanding. They talked about, hey, we're about to start fueling in these minutes. We have this much time to make a decision if we think we're going to get there. The launch team, the SpaceX launch team was just outstanding on this.
Thank you so much for tag teaming the answer to that question. We do have someone joining us on the phone now, Chris Davenport of Washington Post. Chris, are you with us?
Yeah, I am. Thanks so much. Quick follow-up to Bill's question. When you talk about this defect or the crack, like how big is it? Do you have a sense of the measurement? And Sarah, you said it was within the, I think, qualified limits. But what are those? Meaning, like, if you have a crack or a defect of 1 millimeter, it's okay, but 2 is a no-go. And I guess, and Steve, I'd like you to weigh in here as well, since you're tag teaming the answers. I just want to get a sense of your level of concern going through the countdown when you noticed this. Was this like a close call, or were you fairly confident early on that you felt like this was okay and you could go forward? Just want to gauge your level of concern. Thank you.
So to answer the question on the size, so we estimated this square acreage of this defect to be about 0.02 square inches, which is less than half of what we are required to qualify this system to. Holes or cracks or other defects, about 0.05 inches, I believe, is the qualification limit. Yeah, Steve, if you want to answer the second half of the question.
I would say when I first saw the picture of this defect, my experience told me it would be acceptable to fly based on where it was. Again, it was on the lee side of the vehicle. It was a very small defect. It was in an RTV seal, which is a room temperature vulcanized material. It can take high temperature, and then when it sees temperature, it kind of melts over. So that was my initial intuition, is that an engineering judgment is this would probably be okay based on my, also it was on the lee side of the vehicle, which doesn't see the high heating, in an area where we know the flow pattern really well. But I don't say anything at that point, right? I let the team go work through it and see what conclusions that the SpaceX TPS experts and the NASA TP experts come to. They worked through it over a number of minutes, chatted back and forth, went back and looked at the qualification. This particular seal has a bond verification, so when you install that seal, they pull on it to make sure it's rigidly attached. And then beneath it, there's another secondary pressure seal. And then they talked about, could you get any flow down? Would there be any potential to get any flow inside any areas? If so, what would that mean? Is there any pressure source to draw flow in? So I listened to the whole conversation, and based on the way that the engineering team went about it, and also looked at other vehicles, did they see any charring in this area? What's the heating like on previous reentries? And then also the abort cases, should we get into one of those? And so I was able to get comfortable, and our team was able to get comfortable that this was a defect that we could go fly.
Thank you so much for answering that. All right, we'll come back to the room now for any follow-up questions. We have one in the back there. Just give us a moment. It might take us a second to get you a mic. He's on the camera in the very back. There we go.
Yeah, thanks. Hi, Will Robinson-Smith with Spaceflight Now. Question for Sarah. Since you all mentioned the CRS-30 mission, which is set to fly off Pad 40, can you give us an update on how qualification for that is going? And particularly, we saw the emergency escape system being tested with what looks like some type of slide mechanism. Can you explain exactly what that is, how it works, and will you test that with humans before it's human rated? Thanks.
Yes, and that qualification is complete, which is really exciting. Yeah, so Pad 40, you guys are all aware that we've been trying to build up redundant Dragon capability on our 2 neighboring pads, which is really exciting. Remember, Pad 40 is our high-rate pad, and so it's most efficiently used for satellite launches. I think we've gotten the launch-to-launch turned down to just a couple of days, which is really exciting. But it gives us the flexibility that if there's ever a traffic conflict on 39A and 2 missions have to launch at the same time, and one of them's a Dragon, now we can move over to LC-40 and prioritize both of those missions. So super exciting to have 2 pads. The emergency egress system is very similar to the slide wire baskets that were heritage NASA design over on 39A, which we use. The idea is you want to get people away